The deepest shifts? They happen in silence. No fireworks, no applause, no public fanfare. Just a quiet reorientation deep inside you, so subtle the world never notices. A hidden door in a familiar room suddenly there. You've lived in that room for years, certain of its limits. Then, one day, your hand brushes a panel. It opens. A new path unfolds, changing everything, and no one else is even aware. This is the silent shift. Unseen, uncelebrated, yet it holds more power than any change shouted from the rooftops. We're conditioned to think change must be loud, visible, measurable. Society applauds the dramatic career announcement, the public reinvention, the declared new goals. But enduring change doesn't announce itself. Neuroscience proves it. The brain rewires silently through micro-firings that forge new circuits. The first sparks of transformation are invisible. They are the quiet foundation of entirely new identities. The belief that change needs broadcasting, that's what keeps so many trapped, starting and failing. That energy, the need to prove something to the world, it belongs to the old self, not the one you're becoming. Consider quantum physics. Before observation, particles exist in superposition, infinite possibilities suspended in silence. The moment reality collapses into form, it's not loud. It's instantaneous, subtle, noticed only by the observer. Reality itself shifts without fanfare. Your deepest personal shifts are quantum in nature. You embody a new frequency, quietly, and the field reorganizes around you without a sound. So many struggle because they expect noise, but reality is designed to change in silence. Think of your own life. Have you ever felt the pressure to prove you're changing? Posting every step, telling everyone your plan, seeking validation that the shift is real? That very need to be seen is a signal. The shift hasn't anchored yet. True transformation doesn't beg for recognition. It feels like a deep click inside you. Invisible to others, unexplainable even to yourself. It moves beneath the surface. Only later do people around you notice. You're different, they'll say. I can't explain how, but something about you has changed. That's the hidden door. Here's the paradox. The more invisible the change, the more irreversible it becomes. Shout it, and you scatter your energy, dissipating the coherence needed to stabilize the new self. Keep it silent, and you amplify it. This isn't about secrecy for its own sake. It's about deep coherence, aligning so profoundly that the shift imprints into your nervous system before the world gets a chance to question it. It's like planting a seed underground. No one sees it. No one applauds its growth. But in that darkness, roots form, strength develops. When the sprout finally emerges, it's inevitable, unstoppable, no longer fragile. But here's the trap. People confuse noise with proof. They chase external signs instead of cultivating inner reality. The brain craves completion, so it tries to fill the puzzle with visible milestones. Yet the real missing piece isn't external. It's an internal state of being. Wait, just wait until you see how much more stable, magnetic, and expansive your life becomes when you shift internally without needing anyone to validate it. That's the incomplete puzzle your subconscious keeps trying to solve. Every tradition, from ancient mystics to modern physics, points to the same truth. Silence carries the code of transformation. Neville Goddard taught that quiet imagination in the inner chamber was the real engine of creation. Joe Dispenza explains that when brain and heart achieve coherence, the body signals the field, and that signal needs no external witness. The silent frequency is already broadcasting into the quantum field. Others don't need to see it for reality to reorganize. So, here's the unsettling question. If change is so silent, so hidden, why do so many never step through that door? It's not lack of willpower or discipline. It's our addiction to recognition, our need to be seen, to have confirmation that something is happening. That addiction keeps us standing in front of the door, never noticing the handle is already within reach. We wait for applause to validate the step, but the hidden door opens only in silence. The truth is, your reality can shift completely without anyone noticing. Because the noticing is never the point. The point is becoming. And becoming always happens in silence first. The paradox is clear. The less you try to prove you are changing, the faster and more completely the quantum field mirrors that change back to you. This is the secret the world doesn't teach, yet it's the foundation of all genuine transformation. In the silence beneath appearances, there's a field that governs everything we call reality. Modern physics names it the quantum field, a vast ocean of energy where all possibilities exist simultaneously, waiting to be chosen. What most people miss is this: the field doesn't respond to declarations, noise, or performance. It responds to coherence. It listens not to your words, but to the frequency you emit. When your thoughts, emotions, and body align in one direction, that alignment isn't loud. It's quiet, subtle, nearly invisible, like the surface of a lake turning still enough to reflect the entire sky. Science calls this quiet transformation coherence and wave collapse. A thought, sustained with emotion, embodied physically, becomes a coherent signal. That signal resonates within the field, collapsing potential into form. This collapse doesn't roar like thunder. It's more like the flick of a switch in a dark room. Instant, subtle, irreversible. But because the mind craves drama, people dismiss these quiet shifts as insignificant. They look for grand evidence, external confirmation. The field doesn't need confirmation. The moment coherence is achieved, the change is already seeded into reality. Neuroscience adds, when neurons fire together in new patterns, they wire together. At first, these new circuits are fragile, microscopic. But with repetition and emotional reinforcement, the brain strengthens them into dominant pathways. The silent moments when no one is watching are when your brain is literally sculpting your future. The laboratory of transformation isn't a stage. It's the unseen exchanges between synapses. If you knew the power of those hidden moments, you'd treat them like sacred rituals. Here's the incomplete puzzle. If the field responds to quiet coherence, why do so many attempts at manifestation fail? It's not about effort, not about repeating affirmations until exhaustion. The hidden reason is contradictory signals. Meditate for 10 minutes, then spend the rest of the day rehearsing fear, worry, doubt. To the field, coherence never stabilizes. It's like trying to tune a radio while constantly shifting the dial. You never hold one frequency long enough for the music to play. This explains why some insist manifestation doesn't work for them. It's not that it doesn't work, it's that they haven't learned to sustain silence. Think of it this way: the quieter you are internally, the louder your life changes externally. This flips the narrative most of us carry. We believe we must fight, grind, shout our desires into existence. Quantum physics reveals the opposite. The particles forming your reality are already listening, not to your voice, but to your vibration. Every microsecond your heart and brain align, you send out an electromagnetic broadcast powerful enough to alter probability. And yet this broadcast makes no sound. No one claps. The change begins invisibly. There's a story of a woman who shifted her entire life trajectory by doing nothing more dramatic than altering her state before bed each night. For 30 days, she practiced falling asleep in the feeling of the reality she desired. She told no one. Made no grand declarations. Yet, after 30 days, circumstances began rearranging themselves in ways she could never have engineered. A job offer appeared, relationships healed, health improved. To outsiders, it looked like coincidence, but it was the silent language of coherence speaking to the quantum field. The invisible ripple was already moving before anyone saw the surface change. The brain craves closure, so when results don't appear instantly, it convinces you nothing is happening. But that's the trick. The field is always reorganizing silently before it manifests visibly. Imagine planting seeds, then digging them up every day to see if they've sprouted. That's how most people sabotage themselves. They cannot trust silence long enough for roots to form. Here's the truth to hold on to. What happens in the unseen is far more important than what happens in the seen. Wait until you see how much has already shifted beneath your awareness. Science and spirituality converge here. Physics tells us energy fields influence one another without physical contact, resonance. Spiritual traditions remind us, prayer in secret, meditation in solitude, inner work away from the world's eyes, that is the source of true power. Both point to the same truth. The invisible governs the visible. The field isn't persuaded by performance, it's moved by presence, and presence is cultivated in silence. So ask yourself now, if the field moves quietly, if neurons rewire silently, if reality collapses into form without applause, why do you keep searching for visible proof? The answer will challenge you. It's because you don't yet trust that silence is enough. But silence is not emptiness, it is fullness. It is the place where waves become particles, where potential becomes actual, where your life reorganizes without anyone noticing. The field has always been moving quietly. The question is, will you learn to move with it? If you want to understand why some people transform their lives completely, while others remain trapped in repeating cycles, you must look beneath the surface, into identity itself. Identity is the true engine of transformation. It's not what you want that shapes your life, but who you are being every single moment. The field doesn't respond to desperate wishes. It responds to coherence between your inner state and the reality you claim as yours. Here lies the paradox. When you shift identity silently, without announcing it, you rewrite your entire script in ways no one can see, until the evidence becomes undeniable. Science explains this clearly. Neuroplasticity shows the brain constantly sculpts itself to match the patterns you reinforce. If you identify as someone who struggles, your neurons fire in ways that reinforce struggle. Choose the identity of a creator, and new circuits begin to form, even before any visible evidence appears. The change starts invisibly, in the architecture of your brain. But here's the twist most people miss. Those new circuits are fragile at first, like thin pathways in a forest. If you expose them to the noise of seeking validation, announcing your change before it stabilizes, you risk trampling the very paths you're trying to create. Neville Goddard said it plainly, you do not manifest what you want, you manifest who you are. That's why he taught assuming the state of the wish fulfilled. You don't tell the world you're changing. You become the change internally, until reality has no choice but to echo it. Joe Dispenza reinforces this with science. When you embody a new emotional signature, your body literally begins living in the future, to the field. The shift is already real long before anyone else can detect it. That's why the most powerful shifts aren't visible in their early stages. They are encoded in your identity beneath the surface. Invisible yet unshakable. Let me break the pattern here. The more you try to prove your change to others, the less real it actually is. Think about that. If you were already that version of yourself, would you need to convince anyone? No. The need to prove is itself proof of incompleteness. The silent shift of identity requires no performance. It is a becoming, a quiet alignment that stabilizes until the world eventually conforms. That's why, in the beginning, it feels like nothing is happening. You are changing silently, and the external world takes time to catch up. But when it does, the shift appears sudden to everyone else, though you know it has been unfolding for months or years beneath the surface. Consider this: a person who secretly decides, I am wealthy now, and lives in that inner identity, even if their bank account doesn't yet reflect it. They are sending out a coherent broadcast into the field. Their choices begin to align subtly with abundance. Their nervous system no longer rehearses lack, so opportunities resonate with them. Friends might not notice at first, family might think nothing has changed, but one day circumstances pivot dramatically. People will say, how did it happen so fast? The truth is, it didn't happen fast. It happened quietly, beneath the surface, in the realm of identity. There's a psychological puzzle here your brain tries to solve. If identity is invisible, how do you know when it has shifted?
The answer is subtle. You feel it in your body. Old triggers stop pulling you. Old fears lose their grip. Old patterns seem distant, almost irrelevant. That quiet detachment is not indifference. It is coherence. Your nervous system is no longer addicted to the familiar. And when your biology shifts, reality has no choice but to reflect it. But most people miss this sign because they are waiting for external proof first. They don't realize the inner shift is the actual proof, and everything else follows. Identity also explains why change feels so difficult when you try to force it through action alone. If your actions fight against your core identity, the old circuits always win. It's like trying to swim upstream with an anchor tied to your body. You burn energy, but the river of who you believe you are pulls you back. But when you shift identity, action becomes effortless. You no longer have to convince yourself to behave differently. It happens automatically. The identity non-smoker doesn't crave cigarettes. The identity athlete does not negotiate about training. The identity creator doesn't need to force productivity. When identity shifts, behavior flows like water downhill. Here's the curiosity loop to hold on to. The real transformation is not in what you do, but in what you stop needing to prove. Wait until you see how much changes in your life when you no longer argue with the old identity, but simply stop being it. This is why silence is power. You don't waste energy convincing, you invest energy becoming. And when you do, the shift beneath the surface becomes the most unshakable foundation you could ever build. The field is always listening, and it does not hear your declarations. It hears your state. Beneath the surface, identity is the hidden language of reality. When you shift who you are, even silently, the quantum field responds without question. And when that response begins to unfold, it looks sudden to everyone else. But you will know the truth. The shift was always happening quietly, beneath the surface, in the invisible architecture of who you decided to be. Every transformation begins with a ritual, though not the kind you imagine. Most people think rituals must be elaborate ceremonies or visible practices. But the most potent rituals are silent ones, carried out in the private sanctuary of your mind and body, far away from anyone's gaze. The alignment that reorders your reality does not require candles, altars, or announcements. It requires coherence. A simple, quiet practice of bringing heart, mind, and body into resonance.
Done consistently, it becomes the silent ritual that bends the field around you. Science explains why. The HeartMath Institute has shown that when the heart's rhythm becomes coherent, smooth, and ordered, it synchronizes with brainwaves, creating a state of physiological harmony. In that state, the electromagnetic field of the body expands, radiating measurable energy into the space around you. This is not metaphorical. It is physics. Every heart generates a field, and coherence strengthens it. That field communicates with the quantum field itself, carrying the signal of your identity and intentions. But here is the paradox. Coherence is achieved not through noise or effort, but through quiet repetition, through silent rituals you perform when no one is watching. Breathing is one of the simplest yet most powerful of these rituals. Inhale slowly, exhale longer than you inhale, and allow your body to fall into rhythm. Within minutes, your nervous system shifts from survival to creation. Stress hormones decline, oxytocin and serotonin rise, and the body relaxes into trust. In that trust, your signal to the field becomes coherent. The ritual is invisible, but its effects are profound. If you practice this nightly before sleep, your subconscious would carry the signal through the night, weaving your new identity into the very fabric of your biology. And yet, most people dismiss such practices as too simple. They want dramatic change, forgetting that the field is moved by simplicity, not noise. Here's the incomplete puzzle. People obsess over what to add. More affirmations, more vision boards, more effort. But the true key often lies in subtraction. What if the most powerful ritual was not what you do, but what you stop doing? What if you stopped rehearsing fear before bed, stopped carrying old stories into new mornings, stopped giving your nervous system reasons to mistrust. The silent ritual of alignment is not about piling on more. It is about removing the static so the signal can transmit clearly. Wait until you see what happens when your silence becomes clean. Stories of transformation always circle back to the unseen practices. A man who silently repeated a new state of gratitude every morning without ever speaking of it. A woman who fell asleep each night rehearsing the feeling of already being whole. They told no one, they created no spectacle. Yet, months later, their lives looked completely different. Outsiders said, "You've changed," without ever knowing the rituals that made it possible. This is the proof. What you do in silence is infinitely more powerful than what you announce aloud. Now, pause for a moment. Right here, right now, I want you to anchor this truth into action. In the comments, type this phrase: "I move silently, yet everything shifts." Write it as a declaration, not for me, not for anyone else, but as your first silent ritual in action. The act of typing those words plants a seed of coherence. It tells your subconscious, "This is who I am becoming." The ritual is invisible to others, but it is encoded into you. And when you revisit those words later, you'll see them not as a comment, but as evidence that the silent shift has already begun. Let's interrupt the pattern once again. Rituals are not about external theatrics. They are about internal states. The body is the temple. The breath is the ceremony. The state is the offering. Every time you return to coherence, even for a few minutes, you are performing a ritual that instructs the field. And because the field responds quietly, you do not need to repeat it loudly. One aligned breath outweighs 100 frantic affirmations. One silent practice carried out with consistency outweighs years of noise. Spiritual traditions have always known this. The mystics spoke of the secret place, the inner chamber, where prayer and imagination carried more power than public worship. Yogis taught pranayama not as exercise, but as a way of aligning breath and consciousness with universal flow. Even Christ said, "When you pray, go into your room, close the door." All pointed to the same reality. The ritual is not for others to see. The ritual is for the field to feel. And here is the loop that will carry us forward. When you make alignment your daily ritual, you no longer chase change. It begins chasing you. The magnetic pull of coherence draws circumstances, people, and opportunities into orbit around you. The field cannot ignore a stable signal. But this magnetism is not loud. It is silent, invisible, unnoticed by those who are not attuned. Which is why when your life suddenly reorganizes, people will ask, "How did it happen?" And you will know it was the silent ritual of alignment, repeated quietly, faithfully, until the unseen became seen. Every silent shift begins inside of you, but it never stays contained. Like a stone dropped into still water, it creates ripples that travel outward, touching everything in their path. Even if no one sees where the ripple began, this is the hidden truth about transformation. Your inner alignment radiates into your relationships, your environment, and your opportunities, silently reorganizing reality without explanation. The effect is invisible at first, but once it reaches the edges of your life, it becomes undeniable. Science gives us a framework. Rupert Sheldrake's concept of morphic fields suggests that patterns of behavior and thought create energetic blueprints that others unconsciously tune into. Similarly, quantum physics describes resonance. When two systems vibrate at compatible frequencies, they begin to influence one another. This means that when you shift your own state, you are not only altering your personal reality, you are influencing the field of everyone around you. But here is the paradox. The most profound influence is the one no one can trace back to you. They feel it, but they cannot explain it.
Consider relationships. You may have tried for years to change someone's behavior by arguing, persuading, or demanding. Yet often, the moment you shift your own frequency, their behavior changes without a word exchanged. The invisible ripple is at work. Coherence in you creates coherence in the field, and those connected to you begin to align without knowing why. This is not manipulation, it is resonance. The same way a tuning fork set in motion causes another fork across the room to vibrate. Your state sets off subtle reverberations in others, and the ripple always begins in silence. Here's the incomplete puzzle that frustrates so many. Why do some ripples seem to vanish before reaching the shore? Why do shifts inside not always create immediate changes outside? The answer lies in consistency. A single ripple can fade quickly, but sustained ripples create waves strong enough to reshape the shore. Your environment responds not to momentary spikes of coherence, but to the stability of your frequency over time. This is why the practice of silent rituals, repeated daily, has exponential effects. They do not simply ripple, they accumulate, creating currents powerful enough to redirect entire timelines. Let's interrupt the pattern here. Think of the stories you've heard of people who suddenly received breakthroughs, an unexpected job, a healed relationship, a dramatic turn of events. From the outside, it looks like luck or coincidence. But beneath the surface, these were ripple effects, building silently for months or years. What looks sudden is simply the moment the invisible became visible. And once it appears, the world labels it as overnight success, never realizing the success was gestating in silence the entire time. There is also a psychological dimension to the ripple effect. Humans are wired from mirror neurons, cells in the brain that fire both when we act and when we observe someone else acting. This means your state of being unconsciously influences others on a neurological level.
When you embody calm, others around you begin to calm. When you embody abundance, others feel possibilities open near you. You never need to announce it. The ripple is invisible, yet it alters the collective atmosphere. This is why one person's inner work often elevates entire families or communities without a single word spoken. But here is where many people feel despair. They assume that if others don't notice their change, it means nothing is happening. That is the trap. The ripple effect is often delayed. Imagine throwing a stone into a vast lake. The ripples take time to reach distant shores. During that time, you may believe nothing is moving, but the motion is already underway. The field is rearranging in silence, and the effects will appear suddenly in ways you could never have predicted. Wait until you see how many opportunities and synchronicities are already being organized around you, just because you shifted your inner state quietly. This also explains why you cannot fake resonance. The ripple effect cannot be forced by pretending. If your outer actions are loud, but your inner state is chaotic, the ripple will be distorted and weak. But if your inner state is truly coherent, even if no one sees your effort, the ripple will move powerfully into the field. It does not matter whether others approve. The field responds to coherence, not to performance. And when the field responds, the external world must eventually follow. Every tradition has taught this principle in its own language. The Tao speaks of Wu Wei, effortless action that flows like water, influencing without forcing. Mystics describe the fragrance of transformation, a subtle emanation that changes everything without words. Even modern psychology recognizes the silent power of presence. People may not remember what you say, but they always feel who you are being. The invisible ripple effect is simply the universal law of resonance expressed in daily life. So here is the invitation. Stop underestimating the quiet shifts. Stop waiting for applause before trusting the ripple. The change you embody silently today will become the wave that carries your life tomorrow. Others may not notice the beginning, but they will not be able to ignore the outcome. The invisible ripple effect is always moving, shaping, and reorganizing your world. Whether you believe it or not, the only question is, will you sustain the signal long enough to let the wave reach the shore? The journey ends where it began, in silence. But by now, you understand that silence is not emptiness. It is creation in its purest form. The greatest shifts in reality do not require recognition, validation, or noise. They require becoming. And becoming always begins quietly, deep within the unseen chambers of your mind and heart. The true master of reality does not chase proof of change. They embody the change so fully that proof becomes irrelevant. And when the field responds, the evidence arrives without fanfare, sudden, complete, undeniable. Quantum physics has always hinted at this truth. The field collapses not when the world demands it, but when the observer embodies coherence. It is instantaneous, quiet, unannounced. In the same way, when you stabilize a new identity within yourself, the universe reorganizes around it without requiring anyone's permission. The process is not dramatic. It is inevitable. Silent becoming is the art of embodying a new frequency so consistently that the external world has no choice but to mirror it back to you. This is why identity is the foundation. You do not need to prove or persuade. You need only to be. The moment you stop negotiating with the old version of yourself, the field receives a clear signal. Neuroplasticity explains it scientifically. Neurons fire in stable patterns, encoding new pathways of thought and emotion until they dominate your perception. Spiritually, Neville Goddard explained it through imagination and assumption, living as if the wish is already fulfilled. Both say the same thing. The silent state of being is already enough to command reality. The beauty of this is in its subtlety. From the outside, nothing appears different at first. Friends may see you as the same. Family may notice nothing. But inside, something irreversible is taking place. You are no longer rehearsing the old story. You are no longer addicted to the same emotions. You are no longer sending static into the field. And that shift, though invisible, begins to reorganize everything around you. One day, the evidence appears in ways too precise to call coincidence. A door opens, a relationship heals, an opportunity lands in your path. The world calls it luck. You will know it is alignment. Here's the final pattern interrupt. The field doesn't care about the noise you make. It only cares about the signal you embody. Which means the most powerful step you can take right now is to stop announcing and start becoming. Let silence be your strategy. Let coherence be your proof. Because when you finally allow the field to mirror back who you already are, the change arrives so silently that no one notices until the results become impossible to ignore. This is not